Hey guys, Rick with Rick's Toy Room here, and today we are doing another Collecting 101 inspired by our latest delivery. In this case, it was graded comic books. So I thought this would be a perfect time to do a video on what grading is, what the process of it is, and talk about some of the pros, some of the cons, some of the companies you want to deal with, some of them that you don't, as well as maybe the differences and like some of the options on grading. And yeah, so let's do it. So first and foremost, we talked about this on the grading terminology video, or excuse me, the collecting terminology video, but what is grading? So grading is taking a product, sending it to a authority or a specialist of that product, requesting that they give it an inspection, that they validate that it is a legit product, that it is in a specific condition that they would determine based on everything from loose, packaged, color, paint, yada yada yada. Give it a number, give it a grade, and then they would seal it in a tamper-proof or tamper-resistant casing. In this case, the comics are slabbed, as they call them, or they are encapsulated in an acrylic archive, or UV resistant archivable acrylic plastic case. They would do that. They would put the grade in it. They would seal it. They would ship it back to you. They would document the grade. Typically, every grading service has a either QR code or barcode that you can look up on their service's website to check the validity of the grade, the product, who submitted it, etc., etc. And from there, they ship it back to you. Now, why do you want or why should you grade your product? There's a lot of different reasons why you should or would want to. Let's talk about it from the seller aspect. From the seller aspect, it basically guarantees the condition to the buyer, right? So I can sit here and say, this is the Frank Miller #1 Wolverine. It's got a 9.6 grade from CGC, and when I sell this on eBay, there's no disputing the condition of this book. Now, caveat, yes, some nerd is probably going to look at it and be like, they didn't grade it right. Or, look, dude, I paid them to give me a grade. It's sealed. It's yours. Take it or leave it. But no, really, it comes down to it's kind of for me as a seller. If I was to resell these, I won't. But for the Hot Wheels that I've done, for the action figures that I've done, and even for my personal collection, as a seller, it really does guarantee the product's condition. Again, there is no question about it. What you see, what you get, is exactly what you said you were buying. I'm telling you, a CGC 9.6 Wolverine Frank Miller #1. This condition's guaranteed. When they grade comic books, they tend to go through and they go through all the pages. They check the color of them, make sure there's no water damage, nobody scribbled in the book, yada yada yada. That's all part of its grade. So as a seller, the best part of grading a product is to guarantee the condition, and your buyer can't dispute the condition. If they try, look, it's in a sealed package. There's nothing you can do about that. Like, it can't be played with, it can't be modified. It is what it is. As a buyer, you have a similar reason why you want to buy graded product, or why you should buy graded product, I should say, right? And as a buyer, I want to do it because I want to guarantee the product's validity. I want to guarantee its condition. Especially for like autographs, I typically will not buy an autograph book or buy an autograph that I did not get myself without going through some sort of authentication service that I can trust for that autograph. And when I buy comic books that are graded, normally I will buy, like if I'm buying a comic book on eBay, I tend to look for a autograph version. If I can't get the autograph, then I go for a standard grade. And then if I can't do that, I go to one of my friends that I trust with the book to say, look, I need a good condition version. As a buyer, I basically cut out the middleman. I cut out the ability, or at least I make it much harder for someone to sell me a fake item, especially for something that's super rare, super expensive. Vintage G.I. Joes, I love to buy graded. Especially vintage comic books, I like to buy graded. I'll even buy vintage Hot Wheels, or even, newer Hot Wheels graded. If someone spent the time and money to get it graded, if I've got the cash for it, I'm going to buy it. It just guarantees that the seller didn't tamper with it. They're not going to screw with me, and I don't have to go through the process of sending it back and forth and fighting over condition. Also, as a collector, why I like graded product is because it handles, or at least helps support, my value add on my rider policy for my insurance. I can say, look, CGC, CBCS, AFA, whatever I got graded, whatever the company, whatever the grade, I can say, look, it was this condition. So replacing it's going to be worth this much. I won't have to worry about a insurance adjuster going through and saying, oh, well, I'm only going to give you the lowest price on eBay. Screw you, dude. That was graded. You're going to give me market value. So as a collector, that's why I like to grade. Now, who are the grading companies? You just heard me rattle off a couple acronyms. You have CGC, who actually did these comics. That's the Comic Grading Authority. You have CBCS, Comic Book Collecting Society. PSA. You have CGA, Collectible Grading Authority, who owns AFA, Action Figure Authority. CDC, Collectible Doll something, and then VGA, Video Game Authority. And last, well, definitely not last, but the one you want to stay away from if you ever hear them, PSX. These guys are bad mojo. You can Google all kinds of stories about them. You can go read what people have said about them, the experiences they've had. It's bad. Stay away from PSX. They're no good. But everyone else, I could recommend in some fashion. So why would you choose one over the other? Well, for instance, only certain of these groups grade comic books. So CGC, CBCS, they do comic books. If you look at AFA, CGA, CDC, VGA, they do video games, action figures, die-cast, dolls. Like, they're basically your toy line, right? PSA is your sports... forget what PSA stands for, but PSA is your... they are your sports cards. They are your non-sports cards. So your Garbage Pail Kids, the Turtles cards that I went and got autographed, the hockey, football, baseball. They do trading cards essentially, and they also do autographs. They are like the people to go to get an autograph validated, authenticated, and then, if possible, encapsulated. So they do all your sports memorabilia, your footballs, and all that nonsense. So that is why you would choose one or the other. You're not going to send your football to CGC and expect it to get graded. It's not going to happen. Pros and cons of them really depend on the features that you want. So CGC, for instance, they automatically do the UV archival upgrade to the acrylic. CBCS, they charge you for that function. However, I will say that CBCS, I personally like. I mean, I like them for a lot of different reasons. I've heard a lot of other collectors, say they choose them over CGC. But CGC is the first company that started grading comic books. The guy that owned CBCS, or at least did, was one of the founding fathers of CGC, and he broke off. You can go read the story about that. But when it comes to specific features, each of them do things differently. So CGC, for instance, does not authenticate non-witnessed autographs. What's that mean? So a witness for an autograph means that if you go to a Comic-Con or you go to a comic book store that has a artist in town that's doing signings, you can get a witness from either CGC or CBCS to come out to that event or come with you to the table when it's being autographed. They will watch you get the autograph from the actual artist. You will then hand your product to that witness. The witness will either fill out the form, or you can hand them the form, do the submission. They then say, I watched this happen. They are validated, or whatever you want to call it. They are a extension of that grading company. They will say, yes, I watched this be signed. It's legit. The grading company gets it. They then go through and say, cool, your autograph's valid. They grade your book, they encapsulate it, and they give you a special label. I don't have one with me right now, but you can look that up. So that's what a witness does. Both companies offer it. CBCS, however, is the only company that will do post-authentication. So let's say I meet Frank Miller, a month from now, and I break this open and I have him sign it and I send it back to get graded. CBCS will grade it for an additional fee and say, look, yes, they'll authenticate it, they'll compare it, they'll say, yes, it's authentic, and they'll grade it with a yellow label. CGC, on the other hand, will not. They will give it a green label. Apparently, that is like the epitome of bad for your comic books. If you get a green label grade, that means that the CGC has marked your comic down, that it's not in pristine condition, you lost some points, and they don't validate the signature. So could be real, could be fake, you don't know, and most people won't touch them. Now, with that said, I want to point something out. It's interesting that CGC has such high quality standards for their product, and these jokers encapsulated, they slabbed. I don't know if you can see it. There's a hair in my book. So if you get online, you will hear horror stories of companies doing this, where they didn't white glove your comic, your grading, and some joker wasn't wearing his hairnet, and there's hair in your comic slab. Me personally, it doesn't really bother me that much, but at the same token, if I was to ever resell this, there are people that are going to complain about that. I can send these back to have them re-slabbed, re-encapsulated. I won't, or at least I probably won't. We'll see. Normally there's a fee for that. So now let's talk about the process of grading. So how does it work? You would first figure out what you're having graded, and you would turn around and you would go to that company's website, you fill out their form. Everybody's either got an online submission form or an Excel file. You fill in the details, the year, the type, what is it? So if it's an action figure, what year, what company, what product line, what action figure, what exclusive, da-da-da-da-da-da. Comic books, you tell it the year, the silver, modern, bronze, yada, yada, yada. You fill all that out. They kick off a cost of what it's going to... You put in all your add-ins. So what could you possibly add on to grading? Well, for instance, this is the Wolverine logo. I forgot what they call this, but label. And that cost me an extra $5. So instead of using just the generic blue label, I got the label with the Wolverine icon, with the Wolverine claw marks through the number. Why do I do that? I did that because it's easier to find when you're flipping through the tops of the books. So even though the books have their name and their grade at the top, if you were to have these somewhere where you're like flipping through, you'd be able to say, oh, that's a Wolverine comic. Or if it was signed by Stan Lee, they've got Stan Lee ones, they have DC ones. It's more of a vanity item. It absolutely adds nothing to the grade. It has nothing to change the price as a resell. But as a vanity item, that's a markup. The UV protective acrylic. Again, CGC included it. CBCS does charge an upcharge fee for it. AFA charges an upcharge to do action figures or video games, and the same UV protectant is a little bit more expensive. Once you fill the forms out, you've bought your upgrades. There are some upgrades I do not recommend. I do not recommend doing the white glove fast service priority for the grading, because to be honest, I don't think it helps and gets any faster. I also think crap like that causes these type of issues where QA is just not paying attention because they're trying to slap through all the books. I would never pay for that. Amount of people that have been putting submissions in through the grading companies, amount of grading companies that have had to hire more people. I think that paying for that service just condones really bad behavior when it comes to the care that you expect to be taken with your books. Other services you could buy that I do promote, or I would at least suggest think about, is the pressing and cleaning. Now, pressing and cleaning are services where they take an older book or any book, and they basically will run it through like a t-shirt press. At least the homegrown versions are t-shirt presses. But they will take the book, they will essentially heat press the item, and they will flatten out the pages so get rid of some of the creases. Cleaning services where People will use chemicals to clean up any type of like pencil marks, pen marks, any kind of discoloration, and it helps bring the grade points up. Now, I've heard that if you pay for those services, that the companies may mark it as altered. So if they had to clean the book to fix it, they will mark it as an altered book, which it won't hurt they will give it the same grade, and they will give the final product the same grade that a non-altered would have gotten, but they call it out as altered, that they had to do something to it. So I like to use a local guy, a good friend of mine that does both pressing and cleaning. He does a great job. Normally everything he presses for me comes back at least 2 points higher than it would have gotten, if not more. My Gambits, my issue number 1 and first appearance, both came back. I think they were supposed to get like an 8.2. They both came back 8.9. So, I mean, he does a really great job, but there is a really big risk with doing that. By trying to press and clean it, you could screw up your book. So that is one of those features that it's kind of hit or miss, right? Like if you pay to have it done, there is the potential that someone's going to get the new guy on the press and screw your book up. At the same token, there's the possibility that it's going to bump your grade up, and you're going to be able to have a much higher valued comic afterwards. Take that as you will. That is up to you to decide, is it worth the risk? There are certain things, obviously the Wolverines were worth my risk to have them pressed to get a better grade on them. The Gambits were absolutely a better risk. They were key issues, like I said, the first appearance and Gambit number 1. So pressing, cleaning, I would recommend. Just be very careful on who you trust to do it, and look at what the grading company says. If they press and clean it, will they mark the book as altered? Because some people will, look at that differently. What other services do I not necessarily recommend? CBCS recommends or has a photo, video walkthrough kind of your grade. So as your grading process happens, they are supposed to log it. They're supposed to take photos of it. Okay, it made it past this step. It made it past this step. Made it past this step. Here's the final step. I have never once seen that happen for the items that I paid for, CBCS. I had a Masters of the Universe Modulock sealed that was graded with that service. Never got it. A Sears Masters of the Universe 2-pack Skeletor and Triclops. Never got the service that I paid for. Stupid things like that, I don't pay the fee for. They register and log the grading serial numbers. I don't pay for the extra service for them to email that to me or PDF it to me. I don't see the purpose. I'm gonna send you the product as long as you don't lose it, destroy it, etc. Send it back to me graded. Give me my number. We're good to go. So stay away from those. I think those are just kind of they're kind of like the warranty on your Xbox game when you go to GameStop. I'm not going to buy it. GameStop probably isn't going to be around long enough to warranty the product, let alone is it really going to be worth it by the time I break the game to go out and replace it when it's probably at the greatest hits for $10. No, not really. So those are add-on features. Pros and cons against any of the companies. I think we've already kind of went over that. So again, CGC does offer certain things that CBCS doesn't do. CBS offers items CGC doesn't do. When it comes to pricing, I've seen more crap online about how CGC holds the higher value and holds the higher prices. I don't know. People say that they're a better company, yet here I am with a book with hair in it, and they've been known that their acrylic that they use caused what they call the UFO ring, where the plastic has this discoloration in it and puts this really big giant hot spot on your cover. So it's something I would just never I don't know. I've liked CBCS when I was independently doing this before a friend of mine was doing my pressings. I felt that they did better with the grades. I think that their grades are a little bit more authentic. Their turnaround times tend to have been better, but at the same token, I've been really happy with CGC lately. I think the last 10 or 12 books I've had done have all come back in less than 30 days. So I'm impressed with that. Personally, I think it's like anything else. I think it's like any other whiskey or anything you collect or anything you like what you like. You go with the people that have treated you well, and the people that don't take care of you, you don't go back to. I I've used CBCS witnesses. I've used CGC witnesses. I've got nothing bad to say about any of them. The guys were really cool. They met me at the Comic Cons. They met me at the tables. They did their job. I paid them their cut. I think witnessing is anywhere between $25 to $50 to get a witness, depending on how busy that person is, how many books they've got to do. If a lot of people at the con, they tend to do a little bit cheaper, especially if it's for a really popular artist or actor, because they can just stand right there in line and just watch everybody go through, and they didn't have to run around the convention floor all the time. I definitely like to pay for witnessing. It is, again, a feature that if I'm going to get my books autographed to get graded, I want to get them witnessed. PSA, like I said, we are going to try their process this week. We're going to send out the 4 Ninja Turtle autographs and the photo and get them to do the authentication of the autographs. We're going to have them do the slabbing, the encapsulation of the cards, get them graded, and I will tell you how that turned out. So we'll do a follow-up video for those. But hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea on the grading. Oh, I did want to touch base. So another reason you want to do grading, especially for like video games, like I would really trust doing grading with video games. And if you don't do grading, if you don't get them graded, do your research. Buy graded video games. Now, there has been a big stink right now with one of the video game grading authorities that they have been grading remake versions of the games. So recently there was a Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Curse of Dracula. It was one of the import Castlevanias. There's a guy listing it on eBay for like $4,000. A video game collector, there's a YouTuber, he had seen this. He made a big video about it. And the grading company graded a remake as it was the original. So nowhere in their grading did they say, hey, this is the reprint. It's a remake. Like, they just straight graded it like it was original. And that is starting to cause some stink. I'll be honest, every single grading company out there has had at least one fake go through their system. AFA did it with some Transformers. About 7 years ago, there was a huge stink on AFA about how they graded some fake Transformers. AFA bought them up, destroyed them. Like, they're like, we're not letting bootlegs out. We didn't realize it. They apologized for it. I know that CGC has been known for their quality control issues. CBCS has had issues with, I don't want to say fakes, but where they've given higher grades maybe than they should have, or lower grades than they should have. And then, like I said, the video games guys right now have been called out for grading fakes. So do your research when buying video games. If they're graded, you have a much better chance of getting them. And I'm telling you right now, you say, oh, I don't need to, it looks factory sealed. Like, there are certain games out there that have the seam in a certain spot. And if the seam's not in the right spot, it was re-seamed, it was resealed. And a grading service would have, or at least should have, caught that. If not, there are definitely a lot of groups out there to help you with that. So, again, my suggestion is if you're buying certain items of certain vintages, use grading services. That is my personal feeling, that is my personal belief. There is a special grading service for Funkos, so be aware of that. Funkos are one of the biggest, or one of the bigger bootlegged items right now. I think some of the biggest knockoffs are like the Scream Funko Pop, a lot of the horror ones. So like the Scream, the Leatherface, the Michael Myers. There are a lot of bootlegs of those out there. And there are just some of the San Diego, like DC ones that have had a lot of bootlegs lately. So beware. But at the same token, this is why you grade. This is why you authenticate. That way no one can say your item's a bootleg. People can't do a bait and switch on you. Yeah, I mean, if you want to take any takeaway from this, the biggest benefit to getting your items graded as a seller is that when you sell them, there is no chance that this Joker is going to get this book and say, oh, well, you sent me one with folded pages, so it's really, it's not very good, it's only fine, or it's not fine, it's very good, whatever the issue is. This way I can say, look, dude, here's my serial number, here's my book, it was in the photos, you got what you got. No disputes there. And the same thing with buying them. So that's my feelings. That's grading. Let me know if you have any questions. We can talk about it. We'll go through it. I'd love to discuss it. Tell me about your grading horror stories in the comments. I'd love to do a follow-up video. And we're going to see what we can do about Wolverine and his hairy self. Yeah. All right, guys. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.